Ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome to the PVP weekly press conference. Let me say that we're starting a bit late today because we had some other work to do earlier this morning. So, as usual, we have with me our General Secretary. He'll be reading two statements after which we'll be taking questions. Yes?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The first statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party, a few months ago, since the commencement of the sixth cycle of continuous registration, made several calls on GECOM to prepare a list free of discrepancies so as not to disenfranchise any eligible Guyanese, be it at Parabara in the deep south of the Rupununi, Kingston, Georgetown, or at Oriala in Region 6. The PPP has led many struggles on the electoral front, dating back to the achievement of universal adult suffrage since the 1953 elections, right up to the return of democracy in 1992. In every situation, the PPP has championed the cause of every Guyanese to be afforded their constitutional right and to have free and fair elections in Guyana. Today, in or out of government, we stand resolute in our demands for transparency at all elections whenever they are called. Over the past several weeks, the party had caused the right GECOM, outlining the findings of many irregularities in respect of the preliminary list of electors, which our activists have unearthed while conducting fieldwork, list in hand. It was indeed shocking to note GECOM's public statement just a few days into the claims and objections period, accusing the PPP of using community service officers, CSOs, attached to the Ministry of Indian Affairs to pose as GECOM officials at Region 1, verifying the names on the PLE. Further, what boggles the mind is the recent irresponsible and uninformed outbursts by APNU's Winston Felix, accusing the PPP of allowing its activists to pose as GECOM members of staff at Region 5. The party wishes to remind the APNU of the length and depth of the PPP's reach throughout the length and breadth of our country. The PPP upholds the right of political parties to scrutinize the preliminary list of electors in whatever method or manner that party chooses, providing it is done within the meaning of the law and established practices. The parties must be free to report their findings of irregularities to GECOM for further verification and corrective actions. In the circumstances, therefore, we condemn these unwarranted criticisms by GECOM and the APNU as a deterrent to our work on the ground and the placing of our activists at risk while they go about their legitimate duties. Due to our ardent fieldwork, the PPP has uncovered a number of irregularities with regards to the PLE, and on each occasion we have written to GECOM so informing, calling for corrective actions. Some of these findings are as follows. 1. 18 persons were found to be listed at one Georgetown address. More glaring is that one of these individuals had a pre-prepared list of names. Interestingly, GECOM responded by a blatant refusal to conduct a physical verification of these persons. 2. Again in Georgetown, one address was listed for 5 different persons in 2 separate divisions. Hence, they are on different voters' lists. And so, unless corrected, they will be allowed to vote at different polling stations, a case for multiple voting. 3. A GCOM mobile team worked in the evening at Hope Lowland without lights and promised to return but never did, only after the PVP's successful representation to GCOM. 4. The astronomical increase in new registrants amounted to almost 80,000, when previously the usual annual increase was recorded at approximately 11,000. Requests have been made to GCOM to provide a breakdown of the names of these persons and their origin. To date, GCOM has failed to act. Never in its history did Guyana have a list of over 550,000 electors. We deserve a forthright and logical explanation from GCOM. The PVP stands firm as regards the integrity of the PLE and remains strong in its belief that the list in its present form is unacceptable. On several occasions, the party has expressed concerns over the inputting of data into the NRRD and the subsequent compilation of the PLE from this NRRD. The nation was told that GCOM's IT department manages this process. However, the PVP wishes to be informed about the following. 1. Who input the data at GCOM and who supervises the said process at GCOM? 2. What quality control mechanism is in place to ensure the integrity and security of data? 3. Is there still a vacancy at GCOM for an IT manager? And 4. Why the refusal by GCOM to use the services of the Joint International Technical Assistance JITA and the subsequent establishment of an international monitoring unit? As distinct from the so-called grumblings mentioned by the Starbuck News in a Sunday editorial, our findings have revealed a significant number of persons who are still to take transfers and to make corrections as regards their particulars. This concern was already communicated to GCOM in our request for an extension of 7 days to the current claims and objections period. While the PVP welcomed the 7-day extension granted by GCOM, it was indeed sad to note the APNU stand in not supporting this request. Once again, the opposition has displayed its characteristic narrow politics they are known for. Having regard to the relentless efforts by the APNU in opposing our efforts to sanitize the PLE, one must wonder whether they stand to benefit from a perverted electoral process which allows for confusion on elections day and consequently the questioning of the results. An examination of the PNC's electoral record in government as well as the level of the party's internal elections is enough proof in the eating of the pudding. Just last month, the world got an opportunity to see what transpired at their party congress. Based on statements made by contestants for leadership positions at the last congress, the internal electoral process was perverted by the padding of the delegates' list. It is the identical problem which we complained to GCOM about. The PVP is of the view that it is GCOM's responsibility to ensure that persons are listed in the correct registration unit. There should be no excuse whatsoever from GECOM on this crucial aspect of the registration process. The People's Progressive Party calls on all eligible Guyanese to effect their transactions within this period so as to ensure they are on the final list of electors. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is heartened by the interest shown by a large number of civic and political stakeholders in the formation of a broad national democratic front with the party ahead of the next general elections. The PPP has been meeting with various stakeholders and interest groups to discuss the political situation and the need for more to be done to realize the establishment of this broad National Democratic Front alliance, which would see Guyanese electors benefiting significantly from higher levels of transparency, accountability, good governance, and democratic rule. The party is satisfied that its ideology, political principles, and track record has managed to attract many stakeholders who are interested in joining its national democratic platform to build and further develop Guyana. The PPP is also appreciative of the fact that, contrary to what the Sabaknew described as usual fulminations, more and more stakeholders are condemning the opposition's actions to stymie development and cripple progress in advancing the socio-economic growth of Guyana. The party's engagement with a wide range of stakeholders have revealed that resentment is growing increasingly as a result of the opposition's misuse of parliamentary power and the abuse of their one-seat majority. The PPP intends to mobilize greater support for the building of a true national unity government. The party is encouraged by the response to its call and is excited that the country's political culture and system of governance will be further strengthened by its actions. Additionally, the party has taken note of attempts by the leader of the PNCR and APNU, David Granger, to create the impression that there is genuine concern in his camp about pursuing the notion of shared governance. The PPP wishes to reaffirm its position that shared governance in Guyana is realizable only when serious thought and actions are directed at building trust. Formulation of a common platform on socio-economic issues and the rebirth of commitment on the part of the opposition towards fast-tracking the development of Guyana for the benefit of all Guyanese. The party is of the view that any proposal for shared governance should be based on the social, political, and cultural realities in Guyana and not used as a tool to score cheap political points. The PPP maintains that Granger and his acolytes in the opposition have done all that they could do so far to deepen the differences between political parties and further diminish any hope of shared governance becoming a reality. The party is reminded of APNU's dishonesty following a series of engagements with the government in and out of Parliament. The PPP wishes to place on record its concern that the APNU leader's utterances of late are not consistent with his actions as he outlined in a somewhat blurred view of pursuing, quote, a one Guyana dream, end of quote, and the establishment of a, quote, government of national unity, end of quote. How can the APNU and the PNCR, who are consistently at work with the AFC to divide our country by voting against budgetary allocations for the office of the President, Amerindian development, UG students, and other critical sectors, claim to be in the same breath in support of national unity and shared governance? We call on the APNU to stop its pretenses of national unity and to join the national conversation towards the establishment of a broad national democratic front with the aim of advancing Guyana's development. I thank you.
Thanks. Yes. Now we'll open this over for questioning.
With news? Oh.
You said that the party would have met with stakeholders.
You said that what?
The party would have met with stakeholders to discuss the...
You?
Stakeholders. Which stakeholders the party met with to discuss national unity?
Uh-huh.
Who are some of the stakeholders and whether the party would have met with persons from other political parties?
No. Well, we've met with individuals mainly, representatives from other social and religious organizations, either in their individual right or on behalf of their organizations. But political parties, no.
Could you say, name some of the organizations?
At this point in time, no. I wouldn't want to name them because this was broad gatherings of invitees to functions with whom we have had these discussions and social interactions.
Minister Roy and Duncan HGP 19 News. For the ordinary man, Auntie Mary Shikichin.
Who?
Auntie Mary Shikichin. Can you shed some clarifications on the Democratic Front? Can you explain a little bit more when you say that what basically you're recording?
Well, you know, the program of the People Progressive Party has long been geared at the establishment of what is called a national democracy. A national democracy envisages the participation of all Guyanese who are committed, first and foremost, to the strengthening of democracy in the country. That is national democracy, meaning participation of all stakeholders individually and organizationally. This national democracy also has an economic framework which is aimed at strengthening the democratic institutions in the sense that, you know, they say that politics is a concentrated form of economics. So with the political framework towards a national democracy, we obviously would see the enhancement of the democratic gains and even the advancement of those democratic gains once all these forces are involved. And so that is basically some of the foundation principles of the national democracy, which is expected, in theory at least, to be headed or to be, to be headed by a national democratic front, meaning the gathering of many political and social forces who adhere to the principles of a national democracy. Only such a front could guarantee the success of such a national democracy.
Next.
Leroy Smith, Chronicle. Minister, the PPP would have called for an extension of the claims and objections period. GCOM would have agreed and they have extended. Could I have you responding? What is the party's position on that extension?
Well, as I said in the statement, we welcome the extension of the claims and objections period. We had a very good basis for calling for the extension, and it was on that basis that we wrote to GCOM making representation on that matter. Now that we've had an extension of the claims and objections period for 1 week, it means that we are now in a position to intensify our work to ensure what was not completed is completed within that week. We have the, it is now necessary for us to encourage those who have not effected transfers from one place of residence to another, and for all the stakeholders to be part of this exercise, so that there is a strategic objective in the call for an extension, as well as day-to-day activities which require persons to become involved and to participate in the claims and objections period, which at the end of the day is to ensure two things. One, that GCOM deliver a credible voters list, at the end of the day, and two, that every legitimate elector that ought to exercise a franchise is on the voters list and is correctly situated in accordance with the established rules in keeping with the Representation of the People's Act.
During this 1 week, which area the party intends to consolidate most of its efforts and resources with respect to this list?
You mean geographic or electoral?
Geographic and electoral.
Both.
Yes.
Good. Well, we will concentrate our efforts on both fronts, meaning we will concentrate our efforts, as I said earlier, just now, to ensure that every legitimate person who is qualified to be on the preliminary list of electors gets on that list. We also work to ensure that those persons who are qualified to go from the National Register of Registrants move over to the preliminary list of electors. You know, in this elections process, there are several lists that have to be produced. The first is the National Register of Registrants, which is the persons who are 14 years and above. From that list is extracted the preliminary list of electors, which is what we have now, what is called the PLE. So the NRR has come as a result of the continuous registration, the cycles of continuous registration up to the last one. That's how the NRR is compiled. So all persons 40 years and above gets on that list. Out of that list is extracted the preliminary list of electors, which is handed to political parties to go to do the house-to-house checks. We are now concentrating on that. The time that was given for us to check the NRR was very short. By the time we could finish the NRR, we went into the period of claims and objections. The claims and objections period was also a short period. Remember, we had called for an extension of the 6th cycle of continuous registration, which was denied by GCOG. And then we went in the claims and objections period. We found that that was too short also, given the magnitude of persons that we found and irregularities also. As a result of that, we called for an extension of the claims and objections period, which eventually GCOM gave us 1 week. So within that narrow window of opportunity, our task is to complete all of what I would describe as the unfinished business, both in respect to the NRR, continuous cycle of registration, the first 2 weeks that was given to us, 28 days that was given to us in respect of the claims and objections period. So there's a lot of work that we have to complete within that narrow window of opportunity to ensure that at the end of the day, we unearth whatever irregularities are there. We send those to GCOM, and because in fact what we do, we have been GCOM to produce a clean voters list. That's why the lists are given to the political parties. Take these lists, go and do work on the ground. Check the list house to house. We've done that. We've uncovered our irregularities. We send those irregularities or discrepancies to GCOM. GCOM is now expected to correct them to ensure that at the end of this claims and objections period extension, that they have something that is acceptable. Out of this now will come what is called an OLE, an official list of electors. And hopefully that OLE is acceptable to the political parties.
And in which communities would the party be focusing a lot of attention to in ensuring a sanitization of the list of voters?
Wherever in our work in respect to the National Register of Registrants, in the continuous registration cycles, or wherever in respect of the checking of the PVL or PLE, we have found discrepancies wherever they might be, whether in Region 5, Region 2, Region 1, or wherever, we will focus our attention. It may be targeted, it may be general.
Yes. Any other question? Yes.
Any questions
Yes.
outside?
Yes.
You had said it was over 80,000 persons?
Yes, we said so.
Okay. GCOM had come out and stated that that increase could have been due to effective campaigns, including effective campaigns by the political parties themselves and encouraging people to register. You don't think that that's a plausible explanation?
Well, that's one explanation from GCOM's perspective, but you know, as I said, we don't necessarily have to accept what GCOM says. GCOM doesn't contest elections, we do. And therefore we have a vested interest to ensure that our demands, our views, our queries are satisfied. So that if in the course of checking the PLE we find that there's enough evidence to prove that it's not to our satisfaction, whether it's padding, whether it's the wrong placement of persons, and so on, whether there are numbers of persons who are at one location that we find unusual after having done our checks on the ground. Well, we are entitled to express and to have our view in respect to the perfection or the cleanliness of the list. But we would expect GCOM to defend GCOM's views, but we don't necessarily have to go along with GCOM's views. We are a political party, and if we don't do our work, then we'll only become our own worst enemy. We have to make sure that from now, because the list is very critical, and we have to make sure that from now, we point out these things, lest we wring our hands and cry foul when it's already too late. And then people will say, too late is the cry.
You had brought up the 18 persons living.
What was that?
You had brought up the 18 persons listed at a single address last week. Did you provide GCOM with this address as yet?
Yes, we did all of that. Every single time we come up with something, we document it and we send it to GCOM. We don't use these things for propagandistic purposes. We are not like that. Once we find something and we verify that it's indeed so, we send it to GCOM. Let GCOM do their part as well. We have done our part by feeding them with the information.
In the history of GCOM's formation, is this the first time that this party is having so many issues with GCOM?
No, sir. We've had issues with GCOM since even before GCOM became what is called GCOM. Remember, before it was GCOM, it was just called an elections commission.
Between 1992 to now, is this the first time you're having this amount of
No,
issues?
no, no. We've always had issues. That's why I said in or out of government. In or out of government. Listen to me. It doesn't
I know
mean
you would always have issues, but I'm talking about this amount
no,
of
no,
issues.
no. We always have. Well, it's early days yet. It's early days yet. The windows aren't closed as yet. So if we think we have a large amount of issues with GCOM, even as we enter the next 7 days of claims and objections period, you better fasten your safety belt for a rough ride with many turbulences.
All right. Yes.
One last question. Is the party very confident or have, is the party comfortable working along with the chief election officer?
Well, we have never expressed any discomfort. If there should be any discomfort, we will say that. But so far, we haven't expressed any discomfort. Remember, we're talking about GCOM as an institution. We haven't singled out any individual to say we're not happy or dissatisfied with one individual or the other. We focus on GCOM as an institution because it is GCOM as an institution that has to deliver a proper process.
Lucia Fletcher, News of Dave. It's my understanding, GS, that even during the last election, as they prepared for the 2005 elections, GCOM did not have an IT manager per se. They had a consultant that they had hired. Did you have those concerns since then, and why is it only now being raised? And two, as Minister of Home Affairs, could you clarify for me how exactly the law treats to Good Samaritan, say, a licensed firearm holder who happens to be on the scene or in the neighborhood when a crime
Why
is
don't we
going on?
separate those two? I have to take off my PVP hat and then I put on my Home Affairs hat, if you don't mind.
You could please answer.
Yeah, I will continue to answer questions with my PVP hat on.
Okay.
Okay, or cap. Doesn't have a Fed in it though. Now, in respect of the first question with respect to elections, I missed that. What was that again? It was overtaken by
They
Home Affairs.
didn't have an IT manager per se.
Oh yes, yes, the IT manager, okay. All that we're saying is that, look, there is a vacancy with respect to the head of the IT department of GCOM. Very, very critical, very crucial position. Whether it's filled by a consultant or a local person or an overseas person, it's a matter for discussion. The vacancy should be filled. It is too critical a position to be left open. It is too critical a position to be left open. In an institution like GCOM, where information technology, the fact that the data is generated mainly by, not manually, by IT means that you have to have a very qualified, experienced person at the top of that department to ensure that the data is credible, that the data is reliable, that is secure, and that all that is generated from it has the confidence of the GCOM commissioners and the political parties. Because everything in GCOM is actually data-driven, IT-driven. It's highly ITized.
But what if GCOM contends that they have checks and measures in place to ensure that this data is credible? And they've been contending that. Why still have these concerns or raise these concerns?
Well, like I said, we don't have to swallow hook, line, and sinker everything that GCOM says. GCOM is free to say that. We don't have a problem in GCOM defending how they view their performance from their perspective. Not at all. But remember, whatever they generate must be tested. And that is precisely why it is sent, the data is sent to the political parties in the form of lists to test on the ground. GCOM don't do house-to-house registration. They probably did it many, many years ago. I think it was in the run-up to 2008, sometime around then. They did house-to-house registration, and that was done with party people accompanying the GCOM staff members. Okay? But remember, if a political party is contesting the elections, the tradition over the years has always been give the list to the political party so they can go and knock on every door to ask the necessary questions and introducing themselves as a representative of the political party. I did that many years ago when I was a youngster growing up in the party. I did that many, many years. I was chased out of yards. You know, people put dogs on me. Some people even throw urine on me. You know, all those things I faced as a young activist coming up in the party, but we did it. And I always said, good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. I'm here representing the People's Progressive Party. I showed them my list, and I tried to identify myself as best as I could. But we would never encourage our people to introduce themselves as GCOM commissioners or GCOM GCOM members of staff. The moment you do that, you bring your whole, exercise into disrepute. So we don't have to do that. We don't have to, But the point is that GCOM is free to say whatever they feel is their view, but we as the contesting parties must be able to, after we have done verification in the ground, to say what we have found. You see? So once there's a contest between what GCOM is saying and what we are saying, the best thing now is for us to give GCOM what evidence we have, right? So that GCOM now could verify it internally because they have all the data there. They can verify it internally, or they can send people out to investigate our findings. And then if we're wrong, well, they put it out and say we're wrong. If we're right, as they did, for example, on 2 occasions, we will hope that they will eventually, say what they found.
Any other questions?
Now, any other thing about the People's Progressive
The
Party?
2 statements.
Okay.
Minister of Home Affairs. So how exactly does the law treat the Good Samaritans who might be in the scene or around in the vicinity of a crime happening, and they are a licensed firearm holder, and they happen to, say, shoot the bandit or the supposed bandit at the time, and the bandit then dies? How does the law treat to that person?
Okay, before I answer that question, I'd like to ask something for clarification. Have you gotten a response from the police on that? Oh, because I know sometimes, I'm not saying you, but sometimes people get an answer from the police, and then they would tend to check what I say against what the police said to see if there are any contradictions. But you're not doing that. Oh, thank you very much for that straightforwardness and sincerity. Well, if I'm at the scene of a crime, and I'm a licensed firearm holder, and I exercise the right to use my firearm as I've been told to do, because every licensed firearm holder, before they're granted the firearm, they are expected to go to force headquarters in order to be briefed by the competent authority there on to how, where, and when a firearm could be used, either privately or publicly. Now, once you're given those guidelines, and it is given to you also in writing, you are clear about how you can use the firearm either at your home in defense of persons invading your home, unauthorizedly, or in the public, as you said, in a situation of the so-called Good Samaritan. Now, once that is done, obviously, there's going to be an investigation. The police steps into the crime scene, and whether an illegal firearm was found, let's say the bandit had on him an illegal firearm, or a firearm was found in the possession of a Good Samaritan, all are taken by the police. Ballistics are done on each of the firearms. Questions are asked of all who were there and have stepped forward as witnesses, and the investigation proceeds from there on. So the police now carries out the investigation, and based on the evidence that they've taken, based on also the ballistic tests of the firearm of the Good Samaritan, all of that is put down in a file, sent to the DPP for advice on whether charges should be proffered in one direction or the other. Is that clear?
Very quickly, there is a C Division Community Policing Group vehicle. The number is PLL 4671. That vehicle is parked in a compound of the CPG base at the Top Market for almost 6 months now. And the group is without, in that area is without a patrol vehicle. I don't know if you could say, in your capacity as Home Affairs Minister, when that would be fixed, because we were told that the vehicle needs a fuel injector, and the administrator, Mr. Dennis Pompey, told the group that it would cost about $200,000 to fix the vehicle. Could you say who would fix the vehicle? And the other question is the CPG a voluntary body?
Yeah, well, I was recently in C Division, and this matter was brought to my attention. Now, each community policing groups are set up in clusters because there's so many of them in the various divisions. Recently, we had to divide up the divisions to make them smaller, so that in C Division, you have 2 divisions now rather than 1. Each of the divisions are established in clusters. That is done for the purpose of making the groups much more effective insofar as the utilization of assets are concerned, particularly land and water transport. In the case of the East Coast and the particular division that you're mentioning, clusters have also been established. And the cluster, each cluster has what is called a cluster leader. The cluster leader is expected, let's say there are 15 groups in that cluster. The cluster leader is expected to sit down with the various group chairmen and secretaries and formulate a roster so that every Tuesday the vehicle goes to X group, every Wednesday the group goes to another group, and so it rotates among the groups in the cluster. The vehicles are not expected to go outside of the jurisdiction of community policing groups. In other words, if you have 15 community policing groups in one cluster, that vehicle is not to go outside that cluster into another cluster, because that vehicle also, that cluster also has a vehicle at its disposal. Now, within that cluster, apart from the roster being drawn up and formulated and endorsed by the groups themselves, so that they know that which day and between what hours the vehicle will rotate to them. That rotation inventory is sent to the police station in the station district so that they would be aware when that vehicle is moving around in that community. The groups are also expected to send to the station district or the police station the names of the community policing ranks, and if they're RCs, who will be on that vehicle for patrol purposes, so that the police would know when somebody calls and says, I suspect, or that or when somebody calls and says they see a suspicious vehicle moving around, the police would know that it's a CPG vehicle as a result of the license plate number and so forth. Now, so there's the cluster arrangement and the schedule within the cluster arrangement and so forth. That cluster is expected to, let's say it picks up the vehicle from one group to the other, or one set of groups to the other within the same cluster. They're expected to ensure that that vehicle has gasoline. Okay? So that if you pick up, let's say, the vehicle from two groups or one area, you're supposed to pick up that vehicle with its tank filled with gasoline. So you do your patrol. When you finish your patrol, you're expected to fill the tank with gasoline and return it to the group that is supposed to get it in the next round of in the schedule. Now, if you pick up the vehicle, use up the gasoline, and don't refill it when you're returning it to the other people, obviously you're putting a strain on those people who are now taking on the vehicle to do patrols. Now, the groups in the clusters are expected to organize fundraising activities for the purpose of servicing the vehicle and filling the vehicle with gasoline. So through fundraising activities, they're expected to undertake that. And the fundraising activities could take different forms. Once they inform the Ministry of Home Affairs that they are proceeding with organizing of fundraising activities, we will usually give the permission for the fundraising activity to be held. It can either be a barbecue, it can be a fish fry, it can be a raffle, it could be something or the other.
But at the end of the day, it's their responsibility.
At the end of the day, it's the responsibility within the cluster to ensure that the vehicles are serviced, and in fact, the cluster leader, he must keep a watch on the movement of the vehicles, and he must be engaging in something that's called preventative maintenance. He must be the one that must intervene from time to time to say, hold on, it's time for this vehicle to go to be serviced. Okay? So he's a kind of a supervisor, so to speak. And if these mechanisms that are put in place are not upheld, obviously you will end up in a situation like the vehicle, which is now at the Chatumargo outpost of community policing. The systems are in place. The responsibilities with the clusters and the CPG people to make sure that the systems work. That is their responsibility. And in fact, the fundraisers bring them in close community with the community as well. Because if you're organizing fundraising activities, then you expect the community to come out and support the fundraising activities. You're expected to socialize with the people, the business people, the ordinary people. And that is the beauty of these fundraising activities. They bring you in close contact with the community, socializing and so forth. And once the people in the community see that you're indeed engaging in these type of activities, they will support you. But if you're not doing anything, then people will ask you, what am I giving support for? When they're sleeping, you're working. So that is the kind of dynamic situation we see in this. Now we've taken a decision. I've given it, the system broke down in that particular division. The system broke down. And it broke down because the persons who were vested with the responsibility obviously did not take the responsibility seriously. So we have intervened because this is government property. We have intervened. I've instructed that the vehicle be returned to the Ministry of Home Affairs, an assessment be made of the repairs that has to be done, and then when that assessment is made, then the ministry will make a determination on where to send the repair and at what cost it should be repaired. Remember, we have also a lot of voluntary mechanics who come and look at it. We have the police mechanic who would come and look at the vehicle because we need to get at least 3 quotations. Make sure we're not ripped off by one person. Whether community police is a voluntary organization, yes, it is.
So the ministry might be buying the injector in this case?
Pardon?
The ministry might be buying the injector in this case?
Well, I don't know what is the problem with it, but the ministry may eventually have to pay for the repairs to the vehicle.
Any other? If not, thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.